So today I want to talk about something different than WoW, one of my other interests, Apple gaming. As some of you know, I actually play WoW and everything else on a MacBook Pro because my entire ecosystem is built around Apple products. It's just a convenience for me, especially with my workflow. So when topics of Apple gaming come up, I'm always very interested in them. And there have been a lot of topics about it lately because Apple's done a huge push into gaming on their platform, especially on iOS. But one topic that's been coming up the last couple days is people are already calling it a flop. They're saying the AAA push on iOS is failing to meet sales goals. You know, a lot of games reported over there recently. You know, Resident Evil, Assassin's Creed, Death Stranding. All these big games have been pushed to the iPhone, and they're not having huge sales numbers. You see here, they're not making as much as some analysts predicted, but I also think they're being too early in their predictions. They're not seeing the bigger picture. I'm going to explain several points as to why these predictions and calling it a flop is short-sighted and it's too soon to call. Like, the numbers aren't there. That's true. The numbers aren't there, but they're not there yet. And there's many factors in that these analysts are not considering. They're just looking at the small picture. They're like, they released these big games. Why aren't they selling? There's a multitude of reasons for that, and I'm going to get into them. The first reason is, well, Digital Foundry covered it best in this video here, and they've done some other videos too. But the TLDR is that while the games run, they don't run perfectly yet. You know, this is the first push. These are the first apps ported to a mobile device that are like AAA quality. You know, big title releases like Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil Village and Assassin's Creed Mirage and Death Stranding. They're playable, but due to memory constraints and everything else, and thermal throttling on the device, they're limited to low resolutions. And metal upscaling to try to make up for them low resolutions, but nonetheless, they're still not super great. I'm not really gonna play this video because I don't want to steal someone else's content, more or less, even though it is the YouTube meta these days, is React content, but I'm not big enough to deal with the fallback of that yet, so I'll leave that to you guys to watch the video to get the technical analysis and the performance. Like, maybe I could find a graph. Like, yeah, the game does lock to like 30 FPS. It is very playable, but you can see right here, the resolution, it's not so great. Now, obviously, on a big screen, it looks terrible. On a small screen, like an iPhone, it might not bother you. You know, for many people, these games are playable. So I'm going to dive into the next point, which I think is a bigger one. Only the latest, and I mean the absolute latest and greatest, iPhone 15 Pro can play any of these games. All these ports are for the latest iPhone only. That is a substantially small market share. You have to consider that the minimum specification is an iPhone 15. So if only like 6% of people in the market have an iPhone 15, obviously the sales is going to be 6% of a giant market share. The market share is not there yet. You know, Apple's big push right now, they're trying to build a library. They're thinking the future. They're thinking long term. But 2, 3, 4 years out from now, you're going to have the iPhone 16, 17, 18, and now you're going to have 4 iPhone models on the market that can play these games, and maybe even play them better. Well, definitely play them better. They're obviously going to have iterative improvements on them. And that market share is going to grow exponentially as they phase out devices. It's like, and then the next question is, well, what there are not players, I'm just saying players. What if users don't upgrade their phone? What if they're happy with their iPhone 12? But here's another part of the strategy. Apple just announced huge improvements to their AI. You know what these huge improvements to AI require? An iPhone 15 or later. Now you start to see. And analysts are already predicting, like JP Morgan already put out a report, that they raised the target for iPhone sales based on this announcement. The iPhone 15 and Plus are required because they have a specific chip on there that allows the AI to do a lot of stuff locally. There's hardware on these devices that's required for Apple AI to work. And I'm probably saying redundant. Apple AI would be like Apple Intelligence. So I'm gonna just gonna call it Apple Intelligence or AI. Anyway, the TLDR of it is more people are gonna upgrade their iPhone starting next year, without a doubt, because now the new features of these iPhones is going to be a substantial jump in the performance and usability of their phone. You know, these Apple AI announcements were damn good. You know, if you watch that demo at all, people are going to want this tech. They're going to be like, I want all that fancy shit. I need to get a new iPhone. So, as I said, the next few years, the old iPhones that can't play these games are going to be sliding out of the market share, and these new phones that can play them will be sliding in. So that market share is going to keep growing, and as long as Apple keeps throwing money at developers to publish these AAAs on iOS, they have a bigger library too. You know, it's only a handful of games now. But how many more games is Apple going to bribe publishers to port over? Because you know they're getting kickbacks. They're not doing it out of their genuosity of their heart. Apple is investing money into this. That's why calling it a flop is also short-sighted. If Apple is willing to dump millions on this, Apple is thinking long-term. Apple is not thinking, let's just throw $100 million on this and see if it works in 6 months. They're not doing that. Apple knows what they're doing. These analysts that are calling us a flop are a very small picture. And Apple's always been long picture. How many times in the last decade or two have people looked at something Apple did and always said, what the fuck are they doing? Apple doesn't know what they're doing. And time and time again, they've been proven wrong because Apple just saw the vision long range and everyone else was looking short range, you know? They're not looking at the big picture. That's a bad habit of many people when they underestimate Apple's strategy. And here's some more evidence of Apple's long-term strategy. The Worldwide Developer Conference just announced Game Porting Toolkit 2, and again, they're doing vast improvements to the tools for porting games. They're making it even easier to test games. Now you can test ray tracing. You can even test AVX-based games without even porting them. And enthusiasts like me can play games that aren't ported at all with apps like Crossover, which I'll get into in another video probably, because I'm not planning to do a lot of crossover tests with this new toolkit soon. But if you don't want to wait for me to do it, there's a lot already out there on YouTube. But the point is, Apple's investing heavily in gaming right now. And it's not going away tomorrow because some people reported it's a flop. They're doing all this work. And let me show you another issue. There are a thing that tells you that Apple's paying attention. The number one reason for bad reviews on some of these iOS ports right now is an inability to download them due to storage requirements, because at present, the App Store was not designed for these large games. They're not designed for large applications in general. The way it works is you need double the size of the application in free space to install it. So if the game like this is 76 gigabytes, you need 150 gigabytes free just to install it. That's not easy to have on an iPhone unless you're buying higher end models. So that alone is making these games difficult to buy or install. And it's the same for the Mac ports of these games. You know, Apple's still, I don't know why, but they're still shipping Macs with only 256 gigabytes of storage. And when you add in all the other applications that already exist, again, people can't buy and install these games due to the double size requirement. As of macOS Sequoia 15 Beta 2, new feature. Starting with macOS 15, the App Store no longer needs twice the space free for an initial app download and install. The free space requirement will now be the final size of the app, plus a small buffer. Apple's paying attention, and they recognize this pain point, that they can't even sell games to users if they can't be installed in the first place, and they're addressing it in the next macOS update, which will be free to all users because macOS updates are free updates. So, there you have it. Apple's long-term strategy, and obviously, the issues right now are growing pains. It's not a flop, it's growing pains. That's what's going on here. And you have to recognize that, but it is gonna grow. Apple is gonna work through these pains, the market share is gonna grow, and this is gonna change AAA gaming on mobile devices. You know, I have a nice controller, there's great controllers that basically turn this into a superior platform than the Nintendo Switch. You might say that's crazy talk. The Switch is the ultimate mobile gaming platform. These are updated yearly. You're always going to be able to play better quality games because they're always going to be higher spec than a system that's upgraded every 7 or so years. Nintendo's got their IPs, IPs that can compete and make their platform relevant. So they're not going away by any means. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is this is going to grow because these are getting more and more powerful. And you snap a controller onto this like a Switch, and now it plays like a Switch. It's literally a Switch, but one you always have with you. And that's another key too. How many of you bring your Switch everywhere? Probably not a lot, but I guarantee you this goes everywhere with you. And if this thing's powerful enough to play a massive amount of AAA games while you're on the train on the way to work, or on your lunch break, or stuck at an in-law's house and they're having boring conversations at the dinner table and you want to go in the other room and play a game on this, this is the future, and Apple knows that. And Apple is investing millions into this. To call it a flop is one of the stupidest things any analyst can do. And that's all I really have to say about that. They just need to stop looking at what's in front of them and look towards the horizon, and then they'll see the big picture. AAA gaming on iOS is going to be a big future. You can bank on it. And that's all I have really to say about this topic. I hope you enjoyed my rantings, and I'll see you in the next video.